Emma Stevenson, welcome to the show.
Sam Bastow, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So, just a brief history. You were a management consultant in the corporate world, you've moved into property, and you're now an executive coach.
Yeah, that's the very short, too long didn't read, whistle-stop tour. But yeah, a few twists and turns probably in that, which we'll get into. But yeah, that's the essence of the hops in the career so far.
Amazing. So we'll get straight into it. And I always ask the same first question. What were you like as a child?
Ooh, it's a good question, isn't it? It forces you to look back and really think about it. I would say largely the same as I am now. Really curious. I always want to know the answer. And I guess that's why I've maybe had so many different careers, looking for something new and interesting, something else to get my hands on or get stuck into. So yeah, I was definitely like that as a kid. Probably the one asking the irritating why questions. Why? And also I think maybe a little bit different and a little bit rebellious in my own particular way. So, you know, if I agree with something, I'm with you, but if I don't, no, I'm not doing that. I think that is carried through in life. So I don't tend to think of myself as a massive rule breaker, but actually it's come up a lot recently in conversation with people about that. I do my own thing. I think is one of my ethos, my motto for life.
Yeah, and why do you think that was and is? Where would it have come from?
Oh, I have absolutely no idea. I think that's the personality bit. I think that's who I am. And I think that in response to that, then you seek out the things that you need. So I'm particularly untypical of the place that I come from and the people I grew up with. Most people still live, or at least the people who I grew up with still live in the same place where I, as soon as I could, I was out of there, university in Dublin, and then straight after graduation moved to London, wanted the kind of the excitement and the challenge and the something different, I guess an adventure. So I think that's my personality. I think that's what's in me. And then if you need to live in alignment with those values, then you seek that out, which is certainly, I think, what I did. And that's how I ended up with an Irish accent, but living in London for all of my adult life.
Yeah, well, without the risk of offending anybody, I think the Irish accent is better than the Cockney accent.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think
Let's see. We won't run a poll on it, but yeah, it certainly has opened a lot of doors for me in a way that maybe 20 or 30 years earlier it wouldn't have. So actually, I know that I'm quite fortunate in that. It's a talking point, if nothing else, when you're out and about.
Yeah, and then so you get to London, and what do you do there?
What you do there, you do the thing that you think you're supposed to do. Get a good job, a big job in a corporate. Try and climb, as I call it, the greasy pole, the corporate ladder, and yeah, everything that you've kind of been brought up to expect. You're kind of in education. I can't speak for any other experience, but certainly in the Irish education system, there's a heavy focus on third level qualifications and kind of corporate jobs and being very well qualified, which stands to a lot of people. But yeah, there's a very definite career path of accountants and engineers seem to be a particular specialty in Irish education system. And so yeah, head to London and you're seeking out the most interesting jobs in big corporates, and that's where I started.
Yeah, so tell me a bit more about what you did in the corporate world then, because you're in the corporate world for quite a while. Yeah. What did you do, and specifically, why did you pick that particular firm or industry to go into?
So the industry that I went to, management consulting, was something that I had identified from my studies. So I studied business and law together, and then I did a master's in business studies, and I'd always been interested in, I guess, commercial and the world of business and commerce. And I like problem solving, and I think that is essentially what management consultancy is about. Here's a problem, go and sort it out, and whatever that problem might be. So I've worked on projects like one particular client had poor internet connection in their regional offices, had to figure out why that was happening, and at the same time I had to roll out SharePoint intranets, so vastly different, but still that kind of idea of here's a problem in the business, and we either need you to fix it or we need you to figure out who the right people are to pull together to fix it. So, and I love that aspect of the job, and still do. I love it when somebody has a business problem. Whenever, if you meet for coffee or you see your friends and they have a challenge, yeah, I do like getting stuck into kind of figuring out what's happening, what we need to do, and how we could maybe resolve it. So it was definitely topic-wise and specialty-wise, it was definitely, I guess, the right place for me.
Yeah, and do you think that having that curiosity as a child that you've mentioned, that's a bit similar, I think, to maybe problem solving and trying to figure out the root cause? What are your thoughts on that?
I guess so. Probably when you're a kid, it's not as it's maybe not as obvious because there's a lot you don't know, and so everything that you're encountering, you're wondering. Well, certainly I was wondering why. Why does it work like that? And I always liked the idea of optimization, but particularly the context that I grew up in. My dad had his own business. You're growing up in a rural community, so pretty much most people run their own businesses. Like everybody runs a farm, so it's that sort of, you just have to figure it out, and you're the person in charge, and whatever, you might know somebody who can help you sort a particular thing out, but it's essentially that day to day, figuring things out. So it was just, we talk about fish in water. It's just the water that I was swimming in, and I was used to it. So a little bit maybe nature, but a lot of nurture as well in terms of the environment and the things that I was just being exposed to.
Yeah, and how long were you in the corporate world?
So all told, probably 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's quite a while. Why move and go into something else? You're obviously comfortable and progressing, and you've been there 10 years. For a lot of people, that would be, I've sort of got me set now. That's me until retirement.
Yeah.
Why move?
It's interesting because I didn't view it like that at all. I kind of thought that I really felt that I was at the bottom, which in hindsight I probably wasn't. But I just felt that there was still a long way to go with regard to where my ambitions were. And I just didn't see a clear route particularly for a woman in business. So I could observe my colleagues and I could see the kind of level of effort that different people were putting into work and who was getting recognised for it and who wasn't. And I just thought, if I'm to play that game, that's going to be hard. And actually, if I work for myself, in control of my own destiny, the effort that I put in, I get the rewards. And that was my thesis. And I went for it, and it did thankfully prove to be true.
Yeah. So you touched on there that it's more difficult for maybe a woman or some people in an industry. Why?
I think because we like what we know. So therefore we gravitate towards those things, and you can see it even in yourself. Like when I've done recruitment, if I see a CV that has a similar background to me, immediately I can understand where they've come from and what they've done. And this was really well highlighted to me once. I had a colleague who had a previous career in the military, and she'd written a job description and she had written two versions. One was for civilian and what the language would be if you were a civilian, and one would be if you were ex-military and the kind of the language and experience. And I mean, the military one was double Dutch to me, but I absolutely knew what the civilian role was. And so you can just see that if you don't have that understanding, you can't recognise in other people the ability because you're just not familiar with it. So it is very hard. Like, people do have to be very conscious about what they're missing out on. But I think that's what happens, is that we we're trying to de-risk things. What's the safest option here? Who do I, a classic thing about work is, do I want to work with this people? Would I like to work with this person? And if that influences, then of course you're going to pick someone like yourself, someone who has similar interests and experience, but you end up with the same block of people all together, and actually you're missing out on loads of other input. So it's a systemic issue as much as it is individuals. But that's not to say that we shouldn't address it. But that certainly is, when I was looking at it from my own perspective, for me, what could I do about it? Well, I could do something different. Whereas if you're a leader in those positions, then it is your responsibility to kind of say, well, actually, what am I missing? What are my biases? And look carefully at that.
Yeah, and I was sort of chuckling to myself inside, because when you said about when people are like you, so I've got long hair, a beard, tattoos.
Yeah.
I'm quite obviously a fan of rock and metal music, and
Well, you say obviously, but if you're not a fan of rock and metal music, I don't know that actually. I just know that you have a thing
yeah,
that I don't know about.
true, yeah. But when I walk past somebody that looks like me, long hair, or they might have a band T-shirt on, we give each other a smile, like we know each
A
other.
little nod, yeah.
So, so yeah. Now you've said that, I can understand why.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's something about shared experience. And like, I would find it, in terms of, say, culturally, for me, understanding other Irish people, so understanding the school system that you go through, there's a real shared sense of understanding. You don't need to explain yourself. And it's kind of like an in-joke. If I told you, you wouldn't get it. It wouldn't be funny or insightful for you, not having experienced that. But being part of that system, you get it. And I guess that's a danger, because it's comfortable and we end up excluding people because of those things. But, part of it is human nature in terms of what we're trying to do and what we're seeking out. Like, we're seeking a tribe and we want people to be the same as us.
but it's also great to have people that think differently and act differently. And I'm not one for diversity's sake. I do believe that the best person for the job should get it, regardless of who or what they are. But if you do get people in with different backgrounds and different upbringings, different skill sets, surely that's an asset to the business.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, just diversity. Like, I think nature knows that we need diversity for everything to grow together. But I think we also like our comfort zone, and I think that's maybe the downfall.
Yeah, we're too comfortable being comfortable, I think, sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's comfortable.
So, yeah, and talking of being sort of comfortable, we'll talk about being uncomfortable. So, can you discuss a major challenge that you might have faced in your entrepreneurial journey and how you overcame it?
I guess the biggest challenge when you go and you work for yourself is, like, where's the money coming from? How are you going to get paid? And specifically when you're doing property development, it's about finance and funding. And so, like, I remember at the very outset of doing property development and trying to find funding, and you could speak to one person and they'd say no. And if you took that as the answer, well, then you wouldn't get anywhere. So I just remember sitting, at my desk, not quite with the phone book, I'm not that old, but going through a list of, who next, like, okay, that person says no. And eventually, yes, because we knew we'd made an offer on a property and we knew it was a good price and it was a good deal, but, without the money to buy it, you're not going anywhere. And just having the tenacity to just keep plugging away. And just because 5 people or 10 people say no, there'll be someone who says yes. You just kind of have to search it out and stick with it. So that was initially, I guess, what I found the most challenging thing. There are other things that are challenging, perhaps, but for me, like, they're just problems to solve. You know, the builder doesn't turn up, or the goods don't turn up, or whatever. Like, you just go, okay, right, what do we do to fix it? How do we swap things around? How do we source an alternative product? How do we change the kind of the programming and, do different jobs? So I never felt that was tough or stressful particularly. I just accepted that was part and nature of what the job was. So I think a lot of it is your outlook, in terms of what you think of as a challenger.
Yeah, that's really good that you touch on that, because when I've spoken with other people, they've mentioned that even if people say no, keep going until you get a yes. It's that resilience and the ability to adapt to the changing situations around us. And if somebody would struggle with that, how can they change their mindset and overcome it?
Well, I guess that's the challenge, isn't it? And I guess that's why some people are not suited to this sort of lifestyle or work, that you have to get comfortable with it, and however that is, whether it's, I don't know, journaling, meditation, hypnotherapy, whatever, or just doing it. Sometimes you just have to, the first time it's a bit nerve-wracking, but as you then have success, you can, oh, actually, this is how it works. Actually, that's just part of it. You don't hit on the right thing first time, but you just have to keep going back and realizing that, the first no isn't a failure. The first no, it's just information. You're just, you've got a big net and you're just narrowing it all the time. And that's the job. And accepting that that's the job, rather than, being disappointed or whatever, taking it personally. Just figuring that, this is what's necessary. And find a way to get comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's good. I like the way you say no isn't the answer. It's just information. And if you frame it like that, it's, oh, okay. If somebody said no, what did I do that made them say no? And what could I maybe do to improve the process I've got?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times it's not about you. So, like, particularly using the example that I'm talking about, finance, like, everybody has different parameters in terms of the risk profile, in terms of the things they invest in. And just because they don't invest in the thing that you're doing doesn't mean to say that other people don't. But sometimes it is a little bit, might feel like a needle in a haystack sort of a hunt. But they are out there. There are different people with different approaches and flexibility. But if you have the mindset that, oh, they don't exist, I'm never going to find it, well, then you just give up. You kind of have, well, how I think about it is, here's this massive big bucket. I'm going to keep putting my hand in and drawing out cards until I find the one that is the one that will work for me. That's, well, I've never got to an empty bucket, let's just say that. There's always a card in there for you. So
yeah, that's a good way to look at it. A big bucket, and just keep pulling out until you get what you want.
Lucky dip. Just keep going.
Yeah, I used to love a lucky dip as a kid at the school fete. Yeah. So how do you approach risk taking in your business?
I think in a very calculated way, recognizing that what is rewarded is the risk, and if there's no risk, then there's no reward. And so it's part and parcel of what the nature of being an entrepreneur or property developer is. And so you have to decide what you're comfortable with, like what your parameters are, how much you have to risk. Don't put everything, don't put the house on on black. But you have to have a clear sense of, it's like the advice they say when you go into an auction. You know what your top offer is, what your top bid is, and don't bid over that, because in the heat of the moment you can't think about those things. I think in a sense as well, understanding what your risk profile is, and it will change over time. So in the very beginning, when you have no money and you only have sweat to put into a deal, well, then that's what you're risking. But once you start to build up a portfolio, I guess it's like that, the advice that they have for people who are coming close to retirement, that, you need to reduce the risk profile of the assets you're invested in over time. So I think it changes as we go, but really it comes back to understanding what you're trying to get out, what reward potentially there is, and what risk you're happy to take on is the right word, what risk you're happy to take on, in the hope that if everything comes through, then your reward will be this, but also knowing that you might lose what you've invested. So that's how I think about it.
Yeah, I think what I've picked up there is it's not a one-size-fits-all policy or thought.
Yeah.
You've got to do what's right for you, and what's right for person A might not be right for who person B is.
Yeah, and I think that is, I guess, one of the biggest things you see in business, that people kind of copy strategies of other people around them, without really thinking about why that person made those decisions. And so, I will say, like, I don't have kids, so I have a very different risk profile to someone who does have a family and who has responsibilities in that sense. So we make very different decisions. And if someone were to look at me and emulate what I do, I don't think that's necessarily right for them in terms of specifics. But in terms of the broad approach, what's your objective? What's the level of reward or return? And what are you prepared to, risk?
Yeah, lovely stuff. So moving on, what method of wealth building have you found to be the most effective for you?
Well, I guess investment in property has been like the single strategy, and maybe you'd say the approach is, is it Mark Twain who had the put all your eggs in one basket and mind the basket? So instead of diversifying, finding something that we really understood, really spend time developing our expertise and our knowledge, and really focusing on that, because I have small ISAs and things like that, but really I don't feel like I'm knowledgeable enough to make significant investment decisions. Whereas investing in property, I understand what the risks are. I understand kind of, I guess, the bumps along the way. And so I feel I can make a much more informed decision about my investment, rather than something that really I'd have largely no control over. So that for me has been the best strategy. But obviously if you don't have the time or the finances to build a property portfolio, then that's not going to work for you. So you might have to invest a bit more time researching or getting to know other asset classes that'll allow you to invest smaller amounts of money, or on a part-time basis.
Yeah, it's, I suppose, going back to person A and person B, what suits them.
Yeah.
Building wealth isn't a one-size-fits-all policy either.
No.
Like you've done it in property,
Yeah.
I've done okay in property, but some people can build great wealth through an employed job as well, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it depends really, and also what's your definition of wealth? A lot of people would say that if you're healthy and you have a house to live in, you're, wealthier than a lot of people in the world. I think also understanding that as well helps you work back, because it's quite a broad term, isn't it? Wealth. What do we mean by that? Does that mean that you want a Ferrari, or does that just mean that you want, I don't know, a golf? We're going to use car analogies. And if you want a Ferrari, then go for it. I mean, why not? But if you don't, it takes. And so that's why I always come back to the really understand what you want, what motivates you, what you want to get out of life, how you enjoy spending your time. Because actually a lot of people work really hard without really having a clear goal. So there's kind of like a sort of an amorphous idea of wealth or success. But actually, what does that mean for you if you had, whatever, I don't know, 50 days of holidays a year? Would that be for you success? If you're able to pick your kids up every day after school, is that what success is? Be able to make sure you go to every sports day and every, I don't know, Christmas concert, whatever kids do. But for some people, that is what they truly want. And so I think it's about building around those things, about what makes life good. And then everything else flows from that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So much clarity in how you speak and put things across. And if somebody is feeling stuck in their business or a job, how do they get out of that lull?
Yeah. So I mean, again, it's the going back to what you really want. So time and space to zoom out and think about, okay, not just the big words, so like success, actually the specifics. What is success? If you wake up tomorrow and you're successful, what are you doing? Where are you going? Who's with you? How do you feel? What are you wearing? What are you driving? What do you eat? Like literally down to the very last detail of your day. And then work backwards. Which bits of those do you not have right now? How do you go towards getting it? And for a lot of people, they do have a lot of what they want. If you ask them, would they trade those things for more money or success? I don't think they would. And so then it helps you get in perspective, because I think we tend to focus on what we don't have without acknowledging what we do have. And then the understanding of, is there anything you're willing to trade? And if there isn't, then maybe you have most of what you want.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. And I mean, I can't quite remember the actual percentages, but I said to my dad many, many years ago that I'm in the top 20% wealthiest people in the world.
Yeah, easily.
And
yeah,
it's, you don't actually need that much to be in that top 20%. And if, like you say, if you've got shelter, you've got food, you got your friends and your family, really, I suppose, what else do you need?
Yeah. But I guess we're not really, I don't know, culturally, whatever, we don't really think about those kinds of things. But yeah, if you were, and obviously, like people have different requirements and whatever cost of living, and sometimes it's cash flow rather than having wealth or success. But yeah, largely we are in a very fortunate proportion of the world in terms of the things that we have and things we have access to. I guess it's that, I don't know, maybe that 80-20 rule, but that we're focused all the time on that 20% that we don't have rather than thinking about the 80% that we do. And yeah, I think you have to think about what's driving you to really understand if you're willing to, I guess, make sacrifices or changes to get those extra things, and also be comfortable with not saying, actually, I have enough, and giving yourself permission to just enjoy your life.
Yeah. So if somebody is pushing for something, then they've got this goal of, we'll say, a Ferrari, but they might be suffering setbacks and a bit of stagnation. How can somebody stay motivated during that phase to achieve what they want to?
I think if they really are motivated to achieve that thing, then they will. I think the challenge for people really comes in is where actually maybe it's not in alignment, but they haven't yet admitted that to themselves. Or sometimes there's quite there's a conflict between, we might want kind of two competing things, and actually a lot of our like subconscious, how we are, how we behave, our values and our beliefs, we're not really aware of them, but quite often they can undermine what our, you know, our stated objective might be, you know, the Ferrari, but actually there's something else that's kind of in conflict with that, but that you're not really aware of in your life. And I think that's the question, that if you're finding it really hard to stay motivated, you maybe don't lack motivation. Maybe actually the thing that you think you want isn't really in alignment. And you have to, I guess, really question that and be clear about that. And I think that process, if you say, no, actually, I still want the Ferrari, I think that's good enough to re-energize you to kind of get back, okay, yeah, no, I do really want this. I've thought about it. You know, I can see myself driving down wherever, a highway, whatever. And that's, that'll get you back into the swing and back into motivating yourself to go after whatever it is that is your dream.
Yeah, so would you say that somebody with their dream, they need to find their purpose? Is finding someone's purpose got to be in line with their dream? Are they the same?
Yeah, I think we're getting into semantics there. I mean, lots of different reasons and different words to describe the same thing. But yeah, is your dream your purpose, or is your purpose your dream? I'm not sure that there's a difference between those things. And there are a lot of different philosophies that use different words. So, like, you know, if you ever heard Simon Sinek talk about find your why, you know, the really central. And then there's if you come across the Japanese idea of ikigai.
Yeah, I heard of it, not studied it.
It's, what is it? What you're good at, what you're good at, what people are willing to pay you for, and what there's a need for. There's kind of like a little, you know, 3 circles that overlap nicely. And if you can find the, you know, the intersection of all those, then that's kind of spot on. But quite often, maybe what your purpose is or your dream isn't something that people will maybe pay you for. Well, then what do? You can't live on fresh air. So do you trade that for, that's a hobby, and you make your whatever rent money and your whatever shopping money somewhere else, but that's a trade-off. But yeah,
And maybe that's why there's so many skint artists about, because they love doing what they do.
yeah.
They just haven't found people that will pay them for it.
Yeah, a lot of ways. And actually, like, if you think about that, you think about the opportunities now that we have online for people to support. So I follow a few people on YouTube. There's a runner, Philly Bowen. I don't know if you follow her. Is that right name? Bowen or Bowden. And she was working in a corporate job. And anyway, she has a YouTube channel, and she's been able to monetize that to support her training, because the traditional route into athletics is, if like you're not, I guess, in the very top tier and getting onto like the, you know, the UK level or the England level, GB level teams, there isn't really a way to support yourself other than having a part-time job. And so I guess things like that are now our way for people, yes, artists, or people whose talent isn't in a traditional sense, ways to monetize and find ways to support themselves. But yes, the poor artist is a quite known whatever, not quite a meme, but a stereotype, isn't it? The starving artist in the attic.
Yeah, and for some reason, unless you're Damien Hirst, you make all your money when you're dead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, nobody wants you when you're alive. Yeah,
No.
but isn't that that's kind of like the scarcity idea? It's almost like the fundamental of property. You're not making any more, so once you're dead, there's no more of it to come. So we have a definite estate. So maybe there's something in that.
Yeah, quite possibly. And obviously, you're a very successful woman. What habits or routines would you say have contributed most to your success?
Well, I would say I'm anti-routine, and I think that's what's contributed to success. that I have the freedom and the flexibility to not particularly need routine. And it's something that I not particularly struggle with, but I quite often consider, would it be better if I had a routine and I did certain things in a certain way? But I kind of keep coming back to, I guess I thrive on the being responsive to whatever comes up. And if, an opportunity comes up, I don't know, somebody invites me for lunch tomorrow, I love the fact that I can swap around my diary and say, yeah, actually I can do that. So no, I'm not a flag waver for routine. But that said, like it is a useful technique to, I guess, to conserve your energy. So if you can find yourself in a routine, and you do things without thinking about them, that conserves your energy, because literally you don't have to think about it. But no, I'm not a routine person.
Yeah, and I've heard that Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, they would or do wear the same clothes every day just to cut back on another thing to think about.
Yeah, the brain overload. And yeah, you can appreciate that. But I guess then you have to question, do I want to trade the joy of wearing something different every day for the amount of, and if you're getting something back, in terms of time or creativity for other things, then go for it. But I'm not sure I could wear a black polo neck forever.
No, well, certainly not in this heat anyway.
No, for sure.
No, and maybe they just couldn't be asked to do any washing, and they just use that as an excuse.
Maybe we don't have smell-o-vision yet, so it's a safe thing then, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So can you share a book or a resource that you discovered, you found, that really sort of significantly impacted your personal or professional life?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you probably half a dozen recommendations, but one that really sticks out and I always recommend to people when they want to start a business is one. It's called the E-Myth, and the E stands for entrepreneur, not e-commerce or any of those kind of E's, and it's just about the practicalities of running a small business, creating processes, and kind of, it's just really practical. And I think anyone who wants to start what I would call probably an unsexy business, just doing something regular, I'm not talking about Silicon Valley startups or anything like that, but just running a regular business that, if you told your granny what you were doing, she'd understand what it was. I think that's a really good place to start. Lots of practical advice, and it highlights a lot of things that if you haven't run a business before, you haven't come from that environment, you mightn't be aware of. So that's the first one I recommend for people. And when they finish that, then I'll give them the next half a dozen.
Yeah, and I've heard of that book. It's by Michael Gerber, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Never read it, and I'm glad you said the E stands for entrepreneur, because I've thought the E-Myth. What's he on about? It's like from the 1980s, isn't it?
It is.
So it's
exactly
before the internet.
Before E meant something else. And yes, and in that sense, and that's why I say it's kind of practical and I suppose down to earth, in a sense. So he uses a lot of analogies like hotel business. So thinking about one of them is like the auditing process for hotel rooms. Like, how do you make sure that every guest turns up to a clean bedroom? And you do that through, and it's just, it's the same in surgery. We have checklists for a reason, because it's really easy to miss one thing, but actually you have a checklist. Have I done all of these things? Yes, or someone else can check that as a secondary check. So it's quite practical advice in that book. So that would be my first port of call.
Yeah, and if checklists are good enough for pilots doing their pre-flight checks, then surely it's got to be good enough for us mere mortals running a business.
Yeah, and I think there's a really interesting paradox in that, isn't there? Like, people use checklists in really high risk environments because they are so effective and because the consequences are so significant. Whereas, probably if I don't send that email today, it's not the end of the world. Or if I don't format my document in a particular way, ideally, some other way would be better. Or if I don't fold down the corners of the toilet roll in the hotel room, if I miss that, it isn't the end of the world. But actually, in environments where getting everything right really matters, they still rely on something that is seemingly as simple as a checklist, but actually, I guess, in the simplicity is the significance. So, yes.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we should all have more checklists.
Yeah, and it saves you rethinking about it. So I will admit, you asked about routine. I do have a routine. So I have a holiday checklist, packing checklist, for all the things that you end up on a holiday at the airport buying the 10th, adapter.
Yeah.
Have a list of all the things. And every holiday I go on, the things that I forget then gets added to it. And so now, typically, I don't forget stuff. And I don't find myself buying the 4 times the price thing in the airport. But yeah, that's a routine that does work for me.
Yeah, smashing. So, just to finish off then, I've got one final question, Emma. If somebody wants to become a millionaire, what one piece of advice would you give them?
Well, let's go back to the why. Why millionaire? Do you really need 1 million? Would 500,000 be enough? What are you going to do with that 1 million? Actually, maybe you need 5. So start there with being really specific about what you want and why you want it, and kind of sizing it up. Is that the right target? And once you've got that, then I think the practicalities fall in place behind it, but really understanding why you want to do something that will carry you through the tough times, and also that you'll be able to see yourself making progress. So really, if you do only need 500,000, then, why set yourself a big kind of, thinking about the Blue Peter, do you remember those things where they do the, what do they call them? Like trackers, like how much, how close we are to our goal. If that's your true goal, then it'll be a lot more motivating to see the progress tick along more quickly. And equally, if you set yourself a goal of 1 million, you need 5. It would be devastating to get to 1 million and then realise that actually you still have another 4 to go. So I think it's kind of right sizing the journey at the start helps you break it down into manageable chunks, helps you keep motivated. You see it all the time with people who maybe, let's say, have a haphazard approach to their accounting process, and they think they're doing really well until their accountant gets their hands on their books at the end of the year, and then all of a sudden that massive profit they thought they had is actually 20 grand they owe to HMRC. I think there's something in knowing where you're going and being able to measure it as you get there. Am I getting closer? Hot or cold? Am I getting warmer? Am I closer? Rather than just kind of going round in circles going, oh, I'm busy here. Are you? Or are you just going nowhere? I think that for me is the thing about goal setting. Be specific.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. So thanks a lot for your time, Emma. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, interesting conversation. Thanks for the questions and for all the time and effort you put into putting it together.
Cheers, thank you.
Thanks.